What is your relationship with your sales executive? Is it complementary or is it combative? Are both of you clear about your mutual roles and responsibilities? Is there a sense of mutual respect between both of you? In this episode, I'm going to give you 3 tips to improve your sales relationships. It's the week of 8 March 2021, and this is the 10th episode of Why I Love Sales Engineering. A warm welcome to all. Thanks to all of you for your interest and support in this series. I have really enjoyed pulling these episodes together and look forward to hitting the next 25 episode goal in late June. This week's episode comes after recently reading the book, The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers by Chris White. I believe it was published in 2019. In his book, Chris defines the 6 P's of sales engineering success. Today I'm going to focus on the first P, which is partnering. Over the past 35 years, I've seen a lot of varied relationships in direct quota-carrying sales executives and sales engineers. These relationships have ranged from highly functional and symbiotic to highly dysfunctional and antagonistic. Today, I would like to share 3 tips with you that can help either kicking off a new selling relationship in the right direction or greatly improving existing relationships that perhaps are not on solid footing. Sales is clearly a team sport. In order to be successful in your career as an SE or as an SE manager, this needs to be our leading mantra to which we wake up every morning and we start our day. So let's get started on the first tip. Roles and responsibility. Without being dogmatic, we as the sales executive and the sales engineer need to understand our mutual roles and responsibility throughout the entire sales cycle. This starts with the prospecting stage and extends to the closing stage, but also into the implementation stage. As a sales engineer, our job is to convince the prospect that there is a technical fit between our product and their need with business value that far outweighs investment. The sales executive, on the other hand, is fully responsible for generating the revenue in the form of a closed transaction. As product sales cycles vary widely with different dynamics, your organization should have already gone through some sort of an exercise of mapping these roles and responsibilities out. For example, what would a well-executed discovery look like? What are the criteria for a demonstration? Having a clear understanding of roles and responsibilities is a strong place to begin. Tip number 2, motivations and empathy. We as sales executives and sales engineers are like cats and dogs. As Chris White says, quote, "We need to appreciate that we are wired differently." Chris recently published a PDF file on LinkedIn that highlights many of these differences. The link to this can be found in the post above under the See More link. Let me focus on a few points. These are gross generalizations, of course, but they are important to consider. Let's start with backgrounds. As a general rule, sales executives tend to have training on business and non-technical topics, while sales engineers tend to gravitate to backgrounds in technical domains. Now let's consider what motivates us. Sales executives like to be the center of attention, and they like to focus on relationships and, of course, making money. While we as sales engineers love to make money, we tend to be motivated by being known for our subject matter expertise and technical accomplishments. And finally, what do we fear? Sales executives clearly fear losing the deal. The KPI for sales executives is 100% unrefutable. It's sales, it's transactions. Whereas sales engineers fear losing their credibility or not being prepared. We are all about learning, mastering, and applying. The reality is that having just a little bit of empathy for the other person's situation can greatly improve a working relationship and the possible outcomes. And finally, the third tip is about safe communication and honest feedback. It is about being constructive and being the adult in the room when things go wrong, and they will go wrong. Given the varying nature of sales executives and sales engineers, We need to analyze our failures constructively. Let me give you some examples from Chris White's recent LinkedIn posting. It's an excellent write-up. He gives 3 examples of how to start a post-failure discussion where expectations, observations, and interpretations are discussed. A conversation might start with, "This is what I expected," or "My expectations flawed." Or perhaps, "This is what I observed. Did you see it differently?" Or even, "This is how I might interpret that. How should I interpret it?" By constructively confronting mistakes, we can clear the air and develop a clear understanding of how to fix issues for the next sales opportunity. My questions for you today are as follows. Question number 1. What was the best relationship with a sales executive that you've ever had? What made it so highly functional? Question 2. What tips would you give a new sales engineer and how they form relationships with sales executives, especially those that come from a technical background? Thanks again for joining me on this 10th episode of Why I Love Sales Engineering. We'll see you next week.